Oh my God, I go away camping for the weekend and the whole Democratic race opens wide and then closes immediately. The president's MIA and I don't know what's going on. I'm excited today, though, to be joined by Matt Robison of the Beyond Politics podcast, though. My favorite Democrat. Welcome back to the show.
Wow, that is damning with faint praise. I'm your favorite Democrat?
My favorite Democrat.
Oh,
You're my favorite that's willing to admit they're Democrats. Is that better?
I have 3 kids. I have 1 daughter. My daughter asked me, "Am I your favorite daughter?" And I feel like I could say, "You're my favorite libertarian." Like I don't know. I can't fit you in a box, man. Which is delightful. That's actually one of the things that makes you great at this.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah. So it seemed kind of inevitable after the debate that something had to happen. Either he was going to drop out, he was going to play the basement game like he did 4 years ago, or there was going to be something changed. I mean, how surprised were you in your circles when Biden just pulled the plug on his campaign, said, we'll talk about throwing it to Harris, but specifically Biden pulling back?
Well, 0% surprised. The amount of surprise was on a steady downward decline, like, the downslope of a roller coaster over the last 3.5 weeks. I wrote an article right after the debate in Newsweek in which I said, well, there is still a recovery path for Biden. Here's what he needs to do. And if he's not going to do that, here's the alternative path. I got crazy online pushback to that from my friends in the Democratic Party. What are you doing? You're bailing on Joe, you turncoat. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm skating to where the puck is going. Then I wrote an article 2 weeks ago saying, look, it looks like things are going in this direction. So if Biden is going to withdraw from the race, here's the 5-point plan. You can still read it in Newsweek. I think it's a great article. Here's the 5-point plan for what he should do. Again, online, just crazy pushback. But that's where we're at. And look, that's our job. That should be our job. On the Beyond Politics podcast, on New England Take, we shouldn't just be kind of echoing what's going on. We're not bats. We should be trying to see around the corner and seeing what's coming next. So that is what has looked like is coming next for a long time. My most recent Newsweek article is, if Biden withdraws from the race, he should also resign. I wrote that 24 hours before he withdrew, and lo and behold, now he's withdrawn. And everyone online is like, oh, Matt, that's crazy. Well, I will predict that this is going to be the next conversation.
Start placing your bets. I mean, what's really terrifying to me is just a general American citizen of this country is since this announcement, which did not happen with a press conference, he has been MIA entirely. I mean, maybe he allegedly has COVID. Maybe he's got COVID and he's sick. He's not be able to be out there in the field. But there's this one sketchy phone call he made to a Kamala rally to which I believe was a big rally for the campaign staff, where all of a sudden he said something in the mid sentence when Kamala was talking, and it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? And no one has seen him. Like, I don't know how he could possibly be making it through legitimately till the end of his term.
You think it's the movie Dave? You think they found an imposter who's like a used car salesman somewhere?
At this point, who would be surprised? Who would be surprised with that? With the decline this guy has had over the last 4 years, if you look at clips of him 2 years ago, didn't look good, but it's not this. And all of a sudden out. He was all in on continuing the campaign. His family's pushing him, and now he's gone.
Would you co-sign something for me? The idea that this is, because you are a reasonable guy who doesn't buy into spin. It's one of the things I appreciate about you. So, there's been all this spin from the Republican hacks out there. It's like, oh, there's been a conspiracy of silence.
Yeah.
Bull hickey. No, there hasn't. This is how these things go. If anyone has had grandparents, parents go through this kind of, cognitive decline, it does not happen like slowly over time. It happens in fits and starts. And I think when you said he's not the same guy he was 2 years ago, I would submit to you, would you co-sign the idea he is not the same guy he was 3 months ago? It does not seem to me that he is the same guy. So when I hear people saying, oh, well, they've been cooking this for a long time, I assure you, I promise you, because, Beyond Politics podcast, I do it with Paul Hodes, former Democratic congressman. He is very well sourced with his former colleagues in Congress. I promise you, Democrats in Congress had no idea. There's reams of reporting. Most staff in the White House, no idea. Democrats had no idea that this was going on. The reason they had no idea is that there wasn't a lot to see until very, very recently. Does that make sense to you?
That 100% makes sense. I've never bought the conspiracy theories. This is the first thing. I feel like the right has been especially guilty of it more than the left, is the immediate jumping onto, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. This is all set up. Trump getting shot. Oh, that was the Secret Service intentionally set it up, as opposed to negligence and just poor management because they were understaffed or something like that. I don't buy the conspiracies at first push. And with this, it totally makes sense that he is a guy that has not been doing many press conferences. He does not hold large meetings with huge groups of lawmakers. He has his staff. This has been the thing that's been the point for a long time, especially from the right side of the aisle, is Biden is just the figurehead. His cabinet, which a lot of them are previous Obama cabinet, are running the country. Dr. Jill is the rah-rah person in the background, making sure things are going, I believe, to a certain extent. But it's the cabinet is running the country. It's not Biden, and many people don't realize that because they don't see it, because they keep him hidden away until they need to pull him out.
Well, I think there is probably some truth in that. I think there's some truth in that. I think there's some truth in that with every president, right?
100%.
That's the point of having a cabinet, right? You don't want to just. One of my biggest criticisms of Trump, and this is a nerdy criticism, but it matters. It really matters, is that he pulled so many witless hacks into his administration. Ben Carson, Department of Housing. Really? A guy who believes that the pyramids were constructed to store grain? Really? So I think there's probably some truth in that, but anyone who actually watched Joe Biden's NATO press conference, it's a perfect encapsulation of how these things go with seniors who are having a little bit of age-induced cognitive issues. He could speak very adroitly for long stretches at a detailed level about complicated foreign policy. And then he would mix up Kamala Harris's name and Vladimir Putin's name. It's a slip of the tongue. It's a who knows what. And that's a perfect. And so, if you're a White House staffer, you see him every day being able to do this kind of, deep dive policy. And it's like, okay, the guy's fine on a fundamental level. I think all of it is probably true at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I want to be sure to leave plenty of time to talk about this replacement of Biden on the ticket for the Democrats situation. I was desperately hoping, as someone who loves chaos, I was so hoping for an open convention where it was just going to be like, it's going to be off the rails and crazy, and RFK Jr. was going to magically return triumphantly and take over, and I would laugh and laugh for the rest of my life over it. And then he put his money behind Kamala Harris, which I think, honestly, from the kind of the DEI perspective of the party, which has been a huge focus of what Biden has put out there, and then from a matter of just the mere logistics of transferring a campaign to the funding and donors and everything to push it to anyone but her, I think was going to be catastrophic to the Democrats to even be able to get any of their act together here in the coming months.
I think if people want to do a metaverse version of what could have been, read my Newsweek article from 2 weeks ago, the 5-point plan. There was a way to do this. There was a way to lean into the chaos, to own the chaos. It would have been amazing. You could have had Barack Obama, like the ringmaster, overseeing the circus, leading the Democrats through a series of town halls and mini conventions, and you could have invited in the cameras, made it a big reality show. It could have been the biggest fundraising earned media boon in the history of America. And it could have worked. It could have worked. It can't work anymore. So yeah, by the time we got to where we got on the calendar, it had to be Kamala Harris. And I think what you're seeing more than anything else, this is something right out of C.S. Lewis, one of the Narnia books. He says, people feel so much better after they've made a decision. And that's the number one thing that you're seeing since the Sunday announcement. Democrats just feel better having made a decision. Is Kamala Harris a perfect candidate? No, absolutely not. But no one is a perfect candidate. She has a lot of upsides, a lot of assets, a lot of things going for her. And we have a plan. You know, it's like the Joker said, everything's fine as long as you've got a plan. And now Democrats have a plan.
And any polls are BS from before. I can't remember if it was Ryan Graham or Crystal Ball brought up on on Tuesday's episode of Breaking Points, where they said they mentioned it first, and it was like, oh yeah, this is true. Like, there's a difference between in theory Trump v. Harris versus the reality of Trump v. Harris, where you need to have a solid decision on, I need to pick between these two, and it comes down to, yeah, Harris is, in my opinion, is an extraordinarily flawed candidate, but if you're someone in the middle that despises Trump, and you see someone who's obviously not declining on the debate stage, that's huge.
I want to run a theory by you. I 100% agree with you. I want to get your take on this. This is the New England take, after all. So, give me your New England take. I agree with you that polls taken before this are moot. People are not great at projecting hypotheticals to pollsters. So the idea of if the matchup were, throw it out the window. But a very interesting poll came in as we're recording this just today. A PBS Marist poll, high quality poll, showing the race between Harris and Trump statistically tied. One of the points the pollsters made is that this is actually much better news for Democrats than it is for Donald Trump, because Kamala Harris is a relative unknown to voters. She is a relative unknown. She has room to grow. Donald Trump's polling has been remarkably consistent over time. He has a ceiling. He is not gaining new voters. He is the most well-known person in America at this point. People know what they're getting. If you're going to like Trump, you're going to like Trump at this point. Kamala Harris, people vastly underestimate how little attention most voters pay. I mean this in a good way. Like,
well, they shouldn't. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, you've got more important stuff going on in your everyday life. You're not like a maniac like you and me, right? Like, people live their lives. And I wrote an article about this for Washington Monthly back in March. This is the most misunderstood thing in politics. Only a third of Americans even say to pollsters that they pay some attention to the news. So in Kamala Harris's case, a remarkable opportunity to grow her ceiling, whereas Donald Trump is at it. That's my thesis. What do you make of it?
Yeah, 100% accurate. I mean, anecdotally, out in the field in my work in government, law, and academia, like general family, talking to people, and I say how much I don't like Harris, and they go, "Why? She seems fine." Like that's the most they have, which is the perfect place that she needs to be as she now needs to recover what has happened over the last several months of the Biden campaign. She's in the perfect spot to grow. I don't know if she can keep a cover on her kind of crazy idiosyncrasies and the weird way she talks and her inability to do ad hoc interviews in a way that doesn't make her sound crazy or like she's talking to a kindergartner in the laugh, whatever that laugh is about. But it's definitely, she has tons of room to grow, because definitely, I agree with you, people don't know really much about her.
Right. Is she the most skilled natural politician in the world? No. But the fact that the laugh is the number one talking point of Republicans over the last 2 days, if I were running the Trump campaign, well, many things would be true. If I were running the Trump campaign, I would be pulling in my communication staff by the nape of the neck and saying, dudes, really? This is the best we've got?
Yeah, because there's so much more. It takes 2 seconds. If you start looking at her flip-flop when it comes to when she was in California versus when she was in D.C., it's night and day. If you look back at what she was doing in California, it makes her look like a hypocrite. If you look at what she's done in D.C., it makes her look like she's a crazy left-winger, in my opinion. It just is someone even in the middle. It does not take much to call out Kamala Harris, but she's so unknown.
But for one time in my lifetime in politics, and I've been at this for decades, for decades now, but between campaign management and work in Congress, for the first time that I can remember, Democrats have a structural advantage for the next 3 months. Republicans always have the inside track, right? It's like in NASCAR. You want to be in the inside. Republicans have always had that because Republicans have the luxury of making the shorter argument. It's always been easy. Cut taxes, strong defense, traditional values. Democrats, why use 10 words when thousands will do? And for once, it's easy for Kamala Harris. Pick one. It's the prosecutor versus the perpetrator. It's cops and robbers. It's J.D. Vance, who has more flip-flops than anyone alive, right?
Oh, yeah.
He called Trump America's OxyContin and America's Hitler, okay? So J.D. Vance has no convictions. Donald Trump has 34. It's easy. This stuff writes itself. And for once, Democrats, if we can just take the gift that's been handed to us, we have the easiest messaging job in the world.
Definitely. Okay, Matt, if anyone wants to check out what you're up to, what should they do?
They should go to Beyond Politics and subscribe, please. You can also find my writing on Newsweek.com. I was praised by my Fox News commentator, Trump-supporting editor at Newsweek on my show this week for being someone who is thought-provoking and never easy to nail down in terms of my partisan leanings. She called me, quote, not a hack, which is the nicest thing that one could say these days.
It's definitely the highest form of praise for a political commentator, 100%. All right, definitely be sure to check out Matt. I'll put links in the episode description, especially some of his Newsweek articles that are super interesting around all this. It's NewEnglandTake.com. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon, and Matt will be joining us again in a few days.